looks like he's coming our way. Hopefully we can scare him away. All right, the other people left. Got the place to myself. Now, fortunately, I can't see behind. Well, I can almost see the screen. I'm almost close enough to this camera to see behind me. So I need to get back around the other corner to set up for that bear and wait for him. And I think it's about time I got to start doing that. So how about I share a few? I'll share an email right now. And then I'll go over there. I might have to finish this off at home. Now this is titled The Soft Approach. Hi Steve, please not share my name, as I am relating something that someone else told me and I don't want to out them. About a year ago you spoke about getting others to share the knowledge of the saw-bay. You suggested using the soft approach, asking someone a vague question like, have you seen anything strange while out in the woods? I just turned 55 and a couple years ago I decided I needed to find something to keep me active to stay healthy as I get older. I decided to start playing tennis again. I wanted some formal instruction as I would like to get back to the level I played at 30 years ago. I joined an indoor tennis club near me and started lessons with one of the club pros. We got along well and talked a lot about personal stuff. He talked a lot about him and his girlfriend kayaking the Little Miami River, a very popular spot near with canoers and kayakers near Cincinnati, Ohio. I recalled the recurring premise of so many saw-bay sightings near rivers and streams, so I decided to find out if he or his girlfriend had any experiences or sightings. So one day while he was talking about kayaking, I very casually asked, "You ever see anything weird while kayaking?" He thought for a few moments and smiled and recounted him and his girlfriend coming around a bend in the river one day and finding some 20-something-year-old girl skinny dipping. I laughed along with him and I said, "No, like weird animals you couldn't identify or something like that." He shook his head and said, "No." Then he sat there looking off into space for a few long seconds as if contemplating something. I was smart enough to let the silence continue. He finally said, "I did see something strange when I was growing up." "What did you see?" I asked. He paused again, as if he wasn't sure he should continue. He looked down at his feet and finally said, "I was about 13 or 14. Me and a buddy were horseback riding back in the woods near my parents' house in Indian Hill. Indian Hill is the upscale neighborhood in Cincinnati, nestled in 18 SQ. We were riding along, and up ahead of us I see a guy in all black walk across the trail into the woods on the other side. I asked how close they were, and he said he was about 50 yards away or so. I asked what color the guy's hair was, and he replied, "I didn't see. It looked like he was wearing a hoodie." I said, "So, long black pants and a black hoodie?" He said, "I guess." He was far enough away I couldn't really make out any detail, and I only saw him for a couple of seconds. I asked if it was hot out, and he said, "Yes." It was summertime. I said, "Didn't it seem strange someone was out in the heat wearing long pants and a hoodie?" He just shook his head and said, "I thought maybe it was a prowler. My parents' house had been broken into not long before that. Indian Hill is the most expensive neighborhood in the greater Cincinnati area." I pressed him for more details, size, strange smell, etc., but he said that's about all I could remember. It was 40-some years ago. But he remembered. Right? He remembered that. That was the end of the conversation. Not very exciting or interesting, I know. I just want to let everyone know that you're onto something with how to approach people about the subject. Try to get people to open up about their experiences. Thanks, Steve, for all you're doing for the world. It's truly important work. Take care. S from Cincinnati. All right. Appreciate you shared that. It'll give other people courage to do it too, right? To casually look people in the eye and ask if they've ever seen anything weird in the timber, in the bushes, right? Nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with hearing the answer. You can still hear that family hiking way up the hill to get back up to the vehicles. It's kind of bugging me. I'm not around that corner. I'll give him a little bit yet. I think he was on the prowl right around now, yesterday, maybe a little bit later. Maybe we'll get another one. Okay, what's this one? Steve, my jaw dropped when I heard you tell the story at, quote, a Sasquatch experience, a special message and updates, end quote. I'm a First Nations person from British Columbia. I live in Vancouver and have a very similar story, and I'm a member of the legal profession. Oh, read this one. Read it. It's actually quite a while ago. I read this, so let's read it again. Just because. For reasons of privacy, I only ask you keep my name off, as what I'm about to tell you pertains to our sacred ceremonial ways. Every year in preparation for the annual Sundance ceremonies, the dancers are to do fasting in the woods, what is often called the Vision Quest ceremony. We've been having our sun dances on an Indian reserve in the BC interior, and even though we moved it from the Nicola Valley to where we now face directly into the Stein Valley from the east side of the Fraser River, we still go back to that old spot on a different reserve in a different valley for our fasting camp. I no longer want to do my fasting at that Nicola Valley location because of my experiences. Our Sundance chief remarked once, several years back, probably around 2012, that Bigfoot had been there at the Vision Quest grounds. He said it so nonchalantly, like it was nothing to be alarmed about. Anyhow, what we do is we are placed with other fasters, often about 100 feet from each other. We bring up a sleeping bag, a tarp to keep dry, and our ceremonial items. When fasting, it usually is for 4 days, no food, no water. Part of my difficulty is that I snore kind of loud, so when out there fasting in the middle of the night, whatever is out there can hear me snoring. One night I felt my head being pushed into the ground. That's when I woke up. After, 10 seconds or so, I made a grunt sound like I was unhappy, and after that I was okay. I was sure I was woken by that, but I'd been in a heavy sleep, and part of me questioned if it happened at all, if I was just dreaming. It's pitch black outside, so I just stayed in my bag under my tarp. The rest of the fast that year was fine. I later learned another faster had something sit on him. He figured it was a bear, but I think differently. I heard from a source that the Sasquatch sometimes sit on people. This next event, on another occasion, I'm guessing is 2014 or 15 while fasting at the same location. It was daytime. I could see across the river a person or something dark over across the river. It was walking through a field near the forest. It was too far away for me to see if it was a Sasquatch or a person. I could only make out the details of a person that looked very dark. No details of clothing, just someone walking. I don't remember if it was the next night or not, but this next part is what happened. It was early in the morning when first light starts to come out. I was sleeping in my sleeping bag, and that year I had a black plastic lumber wrap for a tarp. It made so much noise every time I shifted about. The tarps also make a lot of noise too. The cold air in May long weekend usually comes with rain, as we are fasting, so the plastic tarps are what keeps us dry and warm from the cold wet wind. I must have been sleeping quite heavily. I guess I'd been snoring as usual. 1 minute, bear check. You hear that toad? You hear a toad in the grass right there. No bear. I heard something run towards me. That's when I woke up. Whatever came to me came quickly, as if it was charging me. Kind of like a thump, thump, thump as it got closer to me, and then stopped beside me with a big thump. Whatever it was just close to me, right outside of my circle of tobacco ties that surrounded me. I laid inside my circle of tobacco ties and held my sacred ceremonial pipe close to me. I prayed quietly in my mind, but I was afraid to make a move. I was afraid to open the tarp. I was afraid to sit up and confront whatever it was that was out there. There were no vocalizations, just the sound of something outside of my fasting altar, bouncing around right close to my head Maybe there were two, but I couldn't really tell. I kept hearing what sounded like antlers being rubbed together. I grew up knowing about hunting and whatnot, and I know the sounds that antlers make when you rub them together. Anyhow, this went on for quite a while, and all I could do was pray hard in my silence, not daring to move. In my mind, I knew it was a Sasquatch because of its heavy presence. It's bouncing around right outside, and because it was making those scraping sounds. If there were two bucks outside of my spot, and they were fighting each other with antlers, then that would have been a different sound for sure. What I heard was a Sasquatch bouncing around outside where I was fasting, and it had these antlers being rubbed together. The only other thought I had was that it was long fingernails being rubbed against each other, which is likely a possibility as well. So, eventually it moved on and left me alone. I didn't sit up or look outside until I heard other people starting to wake up. That was at least an hour after the Sasquatch left me. I laid still, praying for a very long time. That happened on the last night of the fast, and our helpers came to get us off the hill sometime later in the morning, such as 8 or 9, I'm guessing. Whatever happened to me, it must have been about 5 a.m. I was sure that the other fasters close to me would have heard or seen something, but no one else did. When I finally got released from my fasting altar, I looked closely at the ground where this being had run up to me and stomped before bouncing around close to my head. I specifically was looking for a Sasquatch footprints, but there was none. It was not the type of weather to find a perfect footprint in the ground. Also, the ground was kind of like dry with pine grass and pine cones, needles, etc. There were no footprints, but there was a couple of places where the ground was obviously disturbed. Whatever it was that ran up on me, it stomped in front of my fasting altar, and then it did what I described to you. I could see where it was jumping about as the ground was clearly disturbed, but just no tracks. I'm glad the First Nations people shared their story about being in a tent, had been approached by Sasquatch, and hearing the very same kinds of sounds that I, on a different occasion, had heard. Now I know that this is what they do. I've tried to figure it out, and I imagine that if a Sasquatch takes a person, they might use these antlers to impale a person. There are people that go missing, and I'm not convinced that the Sasquatch are only friendly beings. Some say it's a blessing to see one. I've even been told to never put your foot inside of a Sasquatch track. There is a spiritual dimension involved, but I'm convinced that they are real and are out there. There have been Sasquatch sightings just last year right in the village area of one of the neighboring reserves in the Nicola Valley. I do want to add that one time I worked in Kamloops at the old Indian residential school. I wasn't there for too long, but I met the janitor. He told me he was going to fast up in the Stein Valley. He told me that he was going to fast up in the Stein Valley and that he always does it every year. He always go out alone. In my circle of sundancers, we usually have helpers put us out for a place to fast, but he was not of my circle, and he did things different than what I was trained to do. Anyhow, that year he never came back from his fasting. Nobody's seen him since. Here's a link to the story about that man that went missing on his vision quest. I remember seeing that, sharing it. I truly believe we have to be careful out there. Thanks for sharing this information, and the reason I put this out there is because the only way we as humanity can come to understand what the Sasquatch is and how it operates is by sharing our stories together. It's through this sharing, this crowdsourcing, that we're able to collectively build a more common body of knowledge. Now I know for sure that what I heard that night was not just a one-off, and that other Sasquatch in other locations made the exact noise I heard. Maybe it was the scraping of long, sharp fingernails, or maybe it's the scraping of two antlers together, or even if it was just sticks. These are sounds that are frightening to me. I have no desire to go back there and fast at that location where this happened to me. Thank you and kindest regards. Alright, I know I read that quite a while ago, and I don't mind reading it again. Now, beside thick brush and wind on a river, that's when I've had my closest grizzly bear encounters. Not that there's going to be a grizzly here, but I can't really relax and not look around when it's windy and I'm beside water. Just can't. So, I'm probably going to finish this up later on somewhere else. So, let's go see if I can find a bear. See if we can find a bear. And then I'll get some more voices heard after. I'm really into bears. I'm ready. I got this set so that the image stabilization isn't going to make the video go off on the tripod this time. Alright, I'm back inside. And it's the next day. I've been shredding this place apart. I really screwed up. Sarah gave me a fisheye lens for my Canon camera, and I can't find it. I've been tearing this place apart. I gotta find that thing. I was gonna try it out in here, see what kind of an effect it might have, and show some of my goodies on here, but anyway. No big bear last night. I knew I shouldn't have started doing that because once I start to pursue something like that, I don't stop and it'll eat me alive if I don't go down there to see if he's there again. One bear did come out, but I did get some real cool video of a lot of vultures, eagles, and red-headed mergansers fishing and stuff. And it's interesting to see how much stuff you do see while you're sitting there waiting in ambush, right, for that huge bear. Anyway, what else? I managed to get a couple videos shared, a few emails shared last evening. I spent the rest of the evening hunkered down in the river. Excuse me, waiting for that big bear, but he didn't come out again. Who knows what his routine is, but he'll be back. So I'm going to go down to the river later today and I'm going to lace it up with trail cameras. And if there is enough service down there, which I don't think there is, I'll try a cell camera. Trail camera to text you when something walks by. That'll be cool. What else? I think that's about it. So it's the next day. I'm going to get a bunch of more people heard. A lot of people have seen a Sasquatch / Sabe person. And they need to be heard, and we're going to get them heard here now. What else? Quick mention. New green shirts. She hasn't got them up in the store yet. She got lots of different colors, and she gave me another hat. And she repoed the black hat and the t-shirts that were sitting on the shelf, because I guess you guys grabbed them. And then while I was digging through my stuff, I found a bunch of my belt buckles that I won over the years. Stuffed away in a box, so I put them up there. Proud of winning those. But anyways, enough about me and all the other stuff. Let's get into hearing people's first-hand experiences and get their knowledge stacked into our own knowledge base, alright? Let's go. Who do we got? I'm getting this place set up today to be able to do live stream with you guys, and we'll see if I can get a hold of David Nino and we can get him topped up with information through doing it in here. Anyways, enough babbling. Let's listen to this. Hi Steve, I'll try to keep this short, but you know how stories go. First, I'd like to say thank you for what you do. A little background info. I've been an adventure athlete since I was 16, now 54. I spent countless hours and days and weeks climbing, backpacking, running, cross-country skiing in Yosemite, the Sierras, Death Valley, Joshua Tree, and the mountains and forests of New Mexico. So I've become tuned into my surroundings, familiarizing myself with sounds and smells. Okay, my encounter occurred 2 years ago, 2017, in the Jemez Mountains, either Jemez or Jemez Mountains, in New Mexico. My wife and I had originally decided to do some camping in the Jemez Falls Campground. This is during the week in the early month of July. The temperature mild during the day and cool at night. We arrived at the campground. There was a sign stating it was full. so we decided to head down the mountain a couple of miles to a less frequented campground. But to our surprise, they said they were full as well. Not wanting to head back, I asked the camp host if there was another campground, and the host mentioned they had opened a primitive area further up the mountain about 8 miles away. So my wife and I decided to check it out, and upon arrival we saw that there were some campers there scattered, so we pushed further in, and we found a spot in a little valley. And from where we decided to pitch our tent, we could see a trailer about 100 yards away with a family and no one else around. So, after settling, and now around 6 p.m., we decided to go for a little walk to check out our surroundings, and not more than 30 yards from our tent, I saw a print in an area where it appeared to have been muddy days before, now dry. The print was twice as wide as mine, and there was only half a print. It appeared as if a Sasquatch, was walking on its toes. I tried to look for other tracks, but didn't find anything. Just one solitary print moving from one side of the trail to the other. Not wanting to scare my wife, when she asked me what it was, I said it was a bear track. Anyhow, so we headed back to the camp and made some dinner. As soon as the sun went down, we made a fire and sat around the fire, talking, drinking some coffee. From where we were at, we could see our neighbors. They too had a big-ass fire, and were listening to music loudly, I should add. This went on for about 30 minutes. This is where things changed. We began to hear branches break about 20 yards from us, just off our 10 o'clock, but it just wasn't one or two breaks. There were many, all at the same time. One after the other. It was like a crack, 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 crack. And these were not little breaks. They were big, and I mean big. So I stood up, picked up my mag light, and took about 15 steps toward the sound, and as soon as I shined the light in the general area, it all stopped. I thought maybe it was the neighbors, but I could see them by the fire and moving about in their tent, going in and out of the trailer. So I returned, sat down again, and no sooner had I sat down when the breaks began again, non-stop for like another 2 minutes. So I got up again, and this time my wife came with me. I turned on the mag light and again lit up the area, and we saw 3 sets of eye shine looking back at us. The shine was like a pearl white glow, and they were big, and appeared to be peeking behind the trees as they would sway to the right or left, and would disappear and then appear again. My wife asked me what it was, and I said I didn't know. My wife asked me if maybe it was the neighbors. I went towards their camp and saw they had gone into their big tent and trailer lights were turned off and the fire was out. I thought no one would be walking around in the forest without flashlights, right? I flashed my mag light again, and again 3 sets of eyes were looking back. I wasn't scared, but we decided to sit back by the fire, and again the tree breaks, and again the breaks began. I wasn't afraid or nervous, but I didn't want my wife to be afraid. So, being a Christian, I said to my... Oh, you missed out, wife. I said to my wife that I was going to pray, and she agreed. As soon as I began to pray and said the name of Jesus, everything stopped. And note, there were no sounds of footsteps leaving the area. It was so quiet, but soon the night sounds returned. We stayed another night without any further occurrence, but what I found strange is how the neighbors just completely shut everything down and went in their tent and trailer because certainly they heard those breaks. They were like firecrackers. I cannot deny that as soon as I began to pray, everything stopped. This makes me believe that there is a spiritual side to the story of these beings. Nephilim, fallen angels, or demonic nature, I don't know. But prayer for the believer is most important in these moments. I have other experiences while climbing in the Sierras and Yosemite, but I will leave that for another day. Feel free to use my name, and thanks for how you do what you do. In friendship, Martin Spence. Martin, appreciate you. I hope you didn't say not to use your name. That is a pattern that can't be ignored, right? We cannot ignore patterns. That is one of our top patterns is saying the Lord's name out loud. Absolutely instantly stops.
these things going down. It's a pattern. You can't ignore it. So what's up with that? What's up with that? Is there a spiritual side to these beings? 150,000% there is. The First Nations people have told us dozens and dozens of times these are a interdimensional spiritual being of both flesh and non-flesh. And if you look at the patterns from all of you reporting into each other here, you can't ignore that pattern, right? These beings do some crazy ass shit that we can't wrap our melons around. But I have a feeling we are going to be able to understand with some explanations that are coming. Thank God. But anyway, why the tree breaks? Why the swaying side to side? Why the variations in eye shine color? Right? A lot of people say the red eye glow, the red eye shine is evil, demonic, raging, anger flavor. The bad ones, right? I don't know. I don't know for certain yet. But anyway, but the one thing that I do note is the swaying side to side. For me, being an observer of wild animals and knowing their body reactions to different scenarios, that detail usually catches my attention when I hear them swaying side to side, looking at you. Why do they do that? Is that a nervous tick? Is that a beginning of what they do to become translucent in a way, right? When Edgar, the nuclear scientist, reported to us that when he looked at that thing, it started jumping up and down and becoming translucent from the bottom up, if I'm correct, right? I know, it sounds a little outrageous, doesn't it? It's a little bit more than a rutting monkey eating bananas swinging from vine to vine, right? But what do? I mean, no matter how hard you want this to be a monkey or gorilla, how hard you just hope it's a monkey or gorilla, well, sooner or later you are going to have to accept the eyewitness testimonies of literally thousands of people who have seen these beings vanish before their eyes. I know, it's a hard thing to say out loud, but I'm saying it. I'm saying it because it's a pattern, and it's a pattern among thousands of people around the planet who aren't connected in any way and have nothing to gain by sharing that they saw that with their own eyes. Right? If I was to ignore all those testimonies of that pattern right there, that one pattern of seeing these beings disappear or vanish, if I was to ignore that at this stage of the game, I don't know, I might as well just go beat my head in the wall and jump in the gerbil wheel and just start running and going nowhere, right? Because that's all you're going to do. If you ignore the people and their testimony, you're not going to go anywhere. So there. Rebuking in the name of the Lord is very effective to date. There has been a small handful of people said it did nothing for them. I don't know. But we're going to keep going. We're going to keep listening to more voices, and we're going to find out, we're going to figure this out. We are figuring it out. Thank God a handful of people who I'm confident have a lot of answers have contacted me, and they're going to share it all. But in the meantime, we're going to keep soaking up the knowledge from all of you, from all of us. So enough rambling, let's get into hearing another person. And thank you so much for sending that in, man. I'm glad it worked out for you, right? And keep emailing us in whatever else you know. You got more you want to share? But it sounds like you do. Get it into me. Get it into me. All right, who's next? Hey, Steve. Please don't use my full name. All right, I gotcha. My story is similar to the second story you read on December 9th, 2020. I never saw the thing, but I could smell it and hear it. We had just moved to the Mount Hood National Forest. I worked in Portland and drove 38 miles each way 5 to 7 days a week. It was around March, I think. Anyway, I came home around 2 a.m. and fallen asleep on the couch. Porch light was on. There are 2 doors in the front of my house. One enters into the living room, one the laundry room. We have a carport that covers the laundry room entrance, and at the time we had no cover for the front door of the living room. But that's the door we always used, rain or shine. This entrance is closer to the embankment that goes up to Highway 26. You can see the tops trucks going into town from the deck you stand on to enter the door. That is the closest to the side of the house where the light doesn't shine. That was 23 years ago, and I don't remember why we used that as our primary entrance. Anyway, that changed after this night. I pulled in the long driveway, saw nothing out of the ordinary, but when I exited the vehicle, I caught the smell of something that just wasn't quite right. It wasn't quite a skunk or a smelly, musky bear, but more a dead, rotting, skunk-type smell that was almost overpowering. Then I heard the sound like a grunt or something I've never heard before or since. That left me effing scared shitless. I know the local wildlife. I grew up here, and lots of time fishing, and seen the M and heard them. And seen them and heard them? I know the usual guests, and my wife likes to feed everything that moves up here. Here's a few typos. Sorry, you guys, we'll get this. So there I was standing alone in the near dark of the forest. The light was just a 60-watt light bulb in the pitch black night that did little more than lit up the key slot on the door at the time of night. At that time of night, no gun on me, no nothing. I started trying to open the door. My hands were shaking, and I dropped my effing keys. Meanwhile, this pissed off being made some verbal sounds, and I hit the effing door, banging on it, screaming for my wife to open the door. I wasn't about to bend over and make myself a smaller target. That's when it started moving. It was hiding in the dark about 3/4 of the way up the bank, but behind the house where I wouldn't see it. About halfway between the highway and my house, I could hear branches snap and the footsteps, but the sheer speed, this thing and the size of it, you could hear as it ran, coupled with the fact that you couldn't see it. It freaked me out. It ran from behind the house out to the grain field, I'm thinking, and beyond in about 8 steps, a distance of maybe 40 yards, snapping branches and muttering something I couldn't understand. So this distance is no more than 10 yards south of the door. Why could I see branches move, hear them snap like twigs, yet not see it? Finally, after it's out of my immediate area, my wife answers the door, yelling at me, "Why are you banging on the door?" I rushed into the house. She could see the fear on my face. Her conclusion is it's just a bear. I tell these things are real. She doesn't think so. I'm starting to recall the details now, and it still bothers me. I'm not afraid of a damn thing. Panic is not in my nature at all. Since that night, I've heard one scream in a crowded campground of all places. The next morning, some campers were asking, "Did you hear the elk?" I've heard elk, and yes, sometimes in the dark of night they can have an eerie sound, but the ground doesn't shake with a bipedal footfall when they walk. End of story. Yeah, no, they don't, and they don't create terror. And a lot of people, for any new people are here, which is quite a few, we've had a lot of people surging here subscribing. I don't know why. We don't advertise this channel, but I appreciate you're here. I'm glad word's getting out if you have authentic interest. But anyway, the sheer terror part. So far, 100% of our veterans around the world who have experienced fighting, combat, 100% of those people who have witnessed these beings said that they would rather go into combat and experience that fear than the fear that is generated by these beings directed towards us intentionally, obviously. Because it's too substantial. You cannot make somebody this terrified without intentionally having some sort of skill to do it with, right? You can't. You can't. There isn't anything on the face of the planet that we know of in our regular daily lives that can do that. It's not possible. I have had some terrifying experiences, what should be, I was scared, with a handful of grizzlies over the years. One of them tracking me to want to kill me. Tried to get us on the porch of the cabin, right? It turned into a bit of a fight and he died. I've had all sorts of things happen in the wilds over the years. And those animals would be your number one suspect to possibly be able to inflict that kind of terror on a human being. And they can and they don't. I've been there. I've been there with all of them. Wolves around me. I've had 4 wolves coming into me one time, and I looked underneath the branches. I could see all their legs, and they were only about 10 yards away from me. I could feel them staring at me. There's no terror, though. Anyway, how do they do it? Why do they do it? It's not something I don't think we all need to experience by the sounds of it, right? I mean, can you imagine going into absolute war, combat situation, which many people don't survive the PTSD afterwards, and then experiencing the terror from one of these beings, and they said it's 10 times worse than combat. That's freaking substantial, right? I mean, even though this person didn't see this thing physically, scared the absolute shit out of him. Enough he had to find us and share with us, right? Alright, I'm starting to babble today. I gotta stop. Thanks for sending that in, man. Keep us updated. If you're still with us, following the channel. Here's a new one. My story begins with what happened a few years back from my laundry being put on top of the shed to something picking through my garbage. Alright. So, walking my dog one night, something started slapping a tree. I backed off, went the other way. Then the next night, walking in a different area, bushes began thrashing violently. The night after that, I felt I was being watched. So I leaned back, looked over my left shoulder, and something in the bushes started walking back into the swamp. Nobody could walk in this area. It's too grown over, and it's on the edge of a large nature preserve. Everything calmed down for a while. Then going to take out the garbage one night, I lifted the lid to see how full it was, and something growled really loud. I looked and stared in the direction, then walked the trash can to the road about 8 miles away. What? Oh, sorry, about 1/8 of a mile away. So every time I went past the bushes, I got growled at. So I finally talked to the creature that was doing the growling. It soon stopped. Never felt uneasy after that, but knew I was being watched. So, when I would walk my dog one night, I brushed my hat across her rump and made a psst sound. She would take off running all around. So about the 4th night when I was walking, Casey, something from the bushes went... Sorry, there's a bunch of typos. I'm trying to make it smooth. So about the 4th night when I was walking, something from the bushes went psst. It didn't freak me out, but knew I was being watched and didn't detect it. Well, that's about it. But I have a picture of what I think looks a lot like a footprint on the nature trail. My name is Donnie. My croc size is 10. Sitting next to it, look at it real close. To me, it looks legit. Alright, I got the photo. I'll share it right now. It looks like it has had... Alright. It's big. It's a big print. It is a big print. And it's hard for me to tell you what it is, man. You were there. But yeah, that's a very large print of something. And the toes, those toes of that print are way, way, way too big to be the toes of a grizzly bear. That's definitely creepy. I don't know if you got any updates of your experiences. These are older, I believe. And if you got any updates, you should probably send them in to us and keep us posted. Alright. What else do we got? I gotta remember to hold on a minute. I have to find that photo, save it so I can share it with you guys. I'm tired of forgetting to load the photos. Alright, hold on a minute here. Save that image. Got it. Saved. Alright. Who's next? Okay, this one's titled Texas Hunters. I'm going to be in Texas fairly soon. Again, I love Texas. Hey Steve, my name is Tyler Woods. I'm from San Angelo, Texas. You can use my name if you'd like. My experience happened in Texas on the Red River in the Palo Dora Canyon. Me and 3 other buddies were up there camping and hunting white-tailed deer and odad. Odad is a type of mountain sheep. I think they came originally from Iran, didn't they? Me and 3 other buddies were up there camping and hunting white-tailed deer and odad. We were camping near the riverbank at the campsite. We camped out a handful of times over the years. And this is back in 2015. In late September, a little after sundown, but down in the canyon, the sun sets past the lip of the canyon, which makes everything dark in the ground, but the sky was still lit with that grayish and purplish sky we all know at dusk. We're all bullshitting around the fire when in the distance you could hear the footfall of a creature coming towards us. And on the rocks / shale and water, you could clearly hear this was a 2-legged creature. The footsteps were very clear on a quiet night, loud enough that we all could hear them, and tell whatever it was walking towards us. Once these steps were uncomfortably close, it all seemed odd that if it were another human, why it wouldn't announce itself by saying hello or hey guys. Don't mean to startle y'all. For whatever reason, as the steps got closer, the woods and canyon felt absolutely silent, like all the small critters knew they weren't to make a sound. This is what initially struck fear in my bones. I know the woods don't go silent at that time of day, and to this day have never heard that type of silence in the woods ever again. Whatever this was, walked to a point just outside the firelight and stopped. That's a lot of confidence, right? That is a lot of confidence. I felt every hair on my body stand up, and the fear that set into us all was something I can't explain. All my senses were heightened, and every fiber in my body was telling me, we need to get the F out of there. Out of there. Then the thing began to circle us slowly, again just outside the firelight, no more than 20 yards away. We couldn't smell the thing until it must have gotten downwind of us, because the smell that hit us was something I've never smelled before. It was a putrid smell, like the smell of death mixed with a wet dog. This thing circled us for what seemed like 30 minutes, but I'm sure it was only a few minutes. It never acted out in aggression, but I think it knew that we were no match for it. As quickly as this ordeal started, it ended, and the creature returned in the direction it came from. Once it left, the critters came back, and the normal sound of early fall / late summer evening in the canyon came back. None of us were sure what it was that walks up on us that night. It wasn't until later that we learned about the similarities of what we all experienced in other Bigfoot / Sasquatch encounters that it all made perfectly clear sense, and I knew what we all experienced. We never camped back by the river in the canyon, and 2 of them haven't been hunting and camping ever since. I, on the other hand, can't imagine a life without hunting and camping and being in the outdoors, but I wouldn't ever go looking for this creature that walked up on us that night. To this day, every now and then, near dusk while hunting, I think about that night, and I will still get goosebumps. We never talked about that night to anyone besides the 4 of us that were there that night. Sorry for the long-winded email. I love your channel. I love seeing someone so passionate about hunting and the outdoors like you do. Feel free to share the story if you'd like. Happy hunting. Shared, and appreciate you sending that in, man. Yeah, Tyler, it's coincidental. We just talked about the fear in the previous email to this one, right? What is up with that? Why? And the confidence. The confidence is unbelievable. As you think about it, what it would take for you. Let's just say you were walking through the forest in the dark, in the middle of the night, unarmed, no flashlight, and you look through the timber. Oh, what's that glowing light? Oh, it's 5 Sasquatch sitting around a fire. I think I'm going to go in there and circle around them just out of sight of them. Said nobody ever. Right? Picture it. Picture if you were in the woods and you seen one or more of these beings go from the description of, say, a large male man, whatever you want to call it. Picture it. They're sitting there down by a rock down by the creek. Oh wow, look at those Sasquatch sitting there. I'm going to sneak up on them, like real close. I might even throw a rock in front of them. Said nobody. So you imagine the confidence. It's just such a weird contradicting thing. There's something for me that really is a puzzle, a missing puzzle piece for me is how do they display such freaking confidence when it comes to coming in on us? And the next thing you know, you take a look at them in broad daylight and they run like they're about to get laser beams from our eyeballs that are going to cut their heads off. Right? Just doesn't make sense. I'm going to sneak up on your armed asses next to your fire, and I'm even going to throw shit at you in the dark. And I'm not scared of you or nothing, and I'm going to do that. But oh my God, don't put eyeballs on me in daylight. I'm going to run like you would not believe and hide like holy cow. On average, not every time, obviously, not every time, but they do it. I don't get it. So weird. That's such a weird thing for me. I want the answer to that myself. Very bizarre. All right, who's next? Steve, I'd like to say up front that I really enjoy your work, along with Dave Plaitis, and appreciate that you two give us a venue to tell our stories. I think I had a unique experience that you may or may not have encountered before. I presently live in the Four Corners area of Colorado. My story takes place where I grew up in Virginia. I've always been an avid outdoorsman since my days growing up in Virginia. I've spent much time on the Appalachian Trail since it ran nearby my home. I was heavily involved in scouting and came very close to attaining the rank of Eagle Scout. But high school sports and girls put an end to that. So let me go on with the story. The year was 1972. A group of us from Roanoke, Virginia, were on our annual after-football season camping trip in the George Washington National Forest. This is our second or third after-season camping trip to this particular location, and while we had experienced some strange incidents, wood knocking, along with our campsite being pelted with stones, we always just chalked it up as local kids or other campers messing with us, so we didn't pay much attention to it until one night. Man, I'll tell you what, a pine cone hits the ground, I'm looking. We were in the North Creek Campground about 10 to 15 miles north and east of Buchanan, Virginia, in an area called Arcadia, just down from the Blue Ridge Parkway and the Appalachian Trail. We had the good fortune in procuring what is called the Sportsman's Shelter, one of only two in the area provided on a first-come, first-served basis. This is a three-sided log structure and a raised wood floor and a tin roof, open in front to our campfire and a small creek which was used to keep our cheap beer ice cold. There's also a larger public campground with about 7 or 8 campsites about a quarter of a mile past the Sportsman's Shelter. There were 7 of us, and it was a cold November Saturday night. We'd gone to bed around 11:30 or so, but around midnight, I was awakened by a presence in the shelter with us. Excuse me. I woke when I felt it step up onto the floor of the shelter. We were all in sleeping bags, side by side, with our heads against the rear wall and facing the large fire we had going in front of the shelter. What I saw caused me to involuntarily freeze. I could not move, even if I wanted to. I wanted to wake the others, but I couldn't speak. The thing was standing upright, and the fire was directly behind it. It was a silhouette of a tall, 7 foot or so, and hairy from head to toe. I could not make out any facial features because the firelight was behind it. After a short time, I felt a liquid splash on my cheek, and it took a moment for me to realize that it was pissing between myself and the guy next to me. Actually, it was urinating on the guy's sleeping bag next to mine. When it finished, it stepped off the shelter floor and disappeared. It literally took me about 30 seconds to a minute to come out of what I can only describe as a form of paralysis. I've experienced sleep paralysis from time to time in my youth, and this was much like that, but while I was fully awake mentally, my body was not. My friend woke up about the same time, thrashing in his sleeping bag, yelling that someone had urinated on him, and he was truly upset, thinking that it was one of the other guys pulling a prank. By now everyone was awake, and it was obvious that no one else had done this. When I explained to them what I had seen, it spooked everyone enough that we lost no time gathering up our sleeping gear and walking the quarter mile to the other campground, where thankfully there were still campers up and fires going, and they welcomed us to share their sight. Although I don't remember whether we shared our story with them. I was pretty nervous, and I don't remember sleeping much that night. One of our parents picked us up the next morning. One of our parents picked us up the next morning, or we would not have stayed. I've thought about this incident many times over the years. Maybe it's just some guy in a ghillie suit, but the size, the previous incidents of wood knocks and stones pelting the roof of our cabin, along with territorial pissing aspect of the incident, makes me wonder. Plus the fact that I was physically unable to move a muscle until it was gone, makes me wonder what the hell happened that night. Again, thank you for your YouTube videos. I love the backgrounds you choose, as they look much like the area in Colorado where I presently live. We are truly blessed to live in such beautiful areas like the Western Rockies. Regards, Mark, Durango, Colorado. That's a bit of a statement, isn't it? Just cruising right on up and pissing on a human being in a sleeping bag. And as soon as I read that part, I instantly thought of the hundreds and hundreds of people who have reported in, quote, "This thing was looking at me like it wanted to tear me to pieces," end quote, right? How many people have said that? It looked at me with absolute rage and hatred, disgust. A lot of people have said they've said the word disgust to help describe the look on the face of these beings when they're looking at human beings. And these are just innocent people. You know what I mean? These are innocent people. They haven't done anything to anyone. These aren't what your average mind would think. These aren't loggers who have shaved off the timber. They're not miners. They're not people in war blowing the living shit out of everything, annihilating the surface of the planet. There's no guilt there. There's no guilty players laying on the ground in a sleeping bag to warrant going up, singling one out, making everybody freeze and blatantly pissing all over them. Probably with a look of disgust in your face and walking away. What's going on? What's going on? Right? Disgust with humans. Not all of them, not all the time, but it sure is a popular description, right? What the hell is that? Something getting killed up there. Hold on. Doc, I need to check this out. I think it's a raccoon. A couple raccoons fighting. I don't know. I got the sliding glass door open with a screen on it, and the timber's right there. Now Ruby's onto it. Alright, I better get my butt going, actually. Probably time. I got a lot of stuff to do. I gotta get this place set up. I gotta get the horses back from across the road. They're grazing over there. And get this place set up. Get a hold of David Nino, hopefully, too. Get that lined up and get ready to also do some live feeds for all of you. Now, that's what I got. I think laptops come with a camera, don't they? But I've got one of these. I know how to hook that up. I bought one of these a little while ago. It's called Stream Cam Plus. So I guess we'll give this a go, right? It's probably what I need, imagine. Or to hook up the Sony Handycam to the laptop, I don't know. But I'll have this figured out today. Oh look, there's teeth marks in this. Lovely, might not even work. Anyway, there you go. I'm gonna get my button gear, get some things done, go down to the river today later on, set up some trail cameras for those massive bears and whatever's else gonna run around there, and then I'll probably go down there again and wait tonight, because once I start I can't stop. Until I get some wicked video of that thing. I'll be back shortly. Share my story at howtohunt.com. That's where you're going to get your voices heard word for word.